Hi everyone. Today's topic is regulation of respiration. So, regulation of respiration is a complex integration of neural mechanisms and which is mainly controlled by the neural mechanisms, but it can be altered by some of the respiratory reflexes and the chemical mechanisms. So, discuss let us discuss the regulation of respiration under the following headings: introduction, neural regulation, that is the automatic control, uh, which is an involuntary function, and then afferent impulses to the respiratory center, and then chemical regulation and the applied aspects. Introduction. So we know that normal respiratory rate in the adult is 12 to 16 per minute. The normal tidal volume is approximately 500 ml. Tidal volume is the quiet inspiration or the quiet expiration. So it all I get adjusted according to the requirement of the body. Spontaneous respiration. It is the rhythmic discharge of motor neurons that innervate the respiratory muscles. So the respiration, the initiation of the respiration happens in the respiratory center, especially the medulla. In the medulla, we will see where it is exactly located. So it is from the center, it gets discharged into the motor neurons and that reaches the respiratory muscles, which does the inspiration. So in that automatic control, so it is an involuntary function. So this center for the involuntary function of respiration is located in the medulla and pons, so which is in the brain stem. So its main function is it makes us to breathe without consciousness, right? Without any conscious effort. So especially but during the sleep, right? When we sleep, we don't make any effort, right? Any voluntary effort. So it all happen involuntary. So while sleeping, this center is very important. If this center gets damaged, then we cannot breathe while sleeping. So it is not possible to sleep without this center. So there is a story saying that uh, online curse in which the queen made her lover who cheated her. So to cut the the involuntary center, so that that person, her lover, she made her not to sleep, and so that if he sleeps, he cannot breathe again. He wakes up, so he died because of that. So there is a term called as online curse. And then voluntary control. This is located in the cerebral cortex. So its main function is so it facilitates uh, the acts like talking, singing, swimming, laughing. So breath holding. So holding the breath. So voluntarily we control that, and even we can hyperventilate, right? So all these things are controlled voluntarily. functions of the respiratory center, the two main functions. So one is the genesis of normal respiratory spontaneous rhythm. So this is the function of the medulla and pontine center, so which happens by neural mechanisms. So the generation of the respiration happens, so that is one of the main function of the respiratory centers. And the second one is the controlling the rate and depth of the respiration. So that is there will be adjustment of the ventilation according to the need of the body. So the metabolic need may vary from time to time. So the oxygen, carbon dioxide, so it has to maintain it, right. So accordingly it can vary the breath. So even during exercise it varies. So it all happens by um, various control mechanism, respiratory control mechanisms. So rate and depth of the respiration is also controlled by the respiratory centers. The regulation of respiration, so it happens mainly because of the neural mechanisms, so which can be modified by the respiratory reflexes and also the chemoreceptors. So let us first discuss about the neural control. So neural control can be described under two topics. One is the automatic control and another one is the afferent impulses to the respiratory center. And then chemical control, so the chemoreceptors and the effect of the oxygen pressure, carbon dioxide pressure and the hydrogen ion concentration, the pH. Automatic control, so it is an involuntary neural control system. So it regulates the respiration by there are several groups of neurons which is located on both sides in the medulla and pons. So these centers include medullary respiratory centers and then pontine respiratory center and then the reticular activating system. Let us discuss one by one. Medullary respiratory centers. So they include two groups of neurons. One is dorsal respiratory group of neurons and ventral respiratory group of neurons. So this is the center which generate the basic respiratory rhythm. So medullary respiratory center is very important to generate the respiratory rhythm. Dorsal respiratory group of neurons. So they are located within the nucleus of Tractus solitarius. So this is one of the very important nucleus in the medulla. So dorsal respiratory group of neurons. So they are located in the nucleus of Tractus solitarius and also in um, some of the reticular substances, nearby reticular substances also. And then this DRG, that is dorsal respiratory group of neurons, they contains the inspiratory cells which is called as inspiratory neurons or eye neurons. So this is the neuron that discharges during inspiration and only during inspiration and not during expiration. So this discharges, this eye neuron discharges during inspiration only. So it depending upon the functional activity performed by the inspiratory neurons. So this dorsal group of respiratory group of neurons, they are divided into three types of neurons. So the central inspiratory activity neuron. So it discharges during inspiration only. So it is the eye neurons. So it passes the axons of the eye neurons. It passes to the contralateral side of the spinal cord. After the spinal cord, uh, so it connects with the spinal motor neurons. So which innervates the inspiratory muscles. So it the impulses passes on to the inspiratory muscles and the inspiration happens. So remember, just remember what are all the inspiratory muscles. So that is the diaphragm supplied by the phrenic nerve, and then the external intercostal muscles which are supplied by the intercostal nerves. So the eye neurons or the inspiratory neurons are the upper motor neurons of the respiratory muscles in short. So which is responsible for generating the basic respiratory rhythm activity, for generating the basic respiratory rhythm activity. So the next one is the inspiratory off switch neuron. What is this neuron refers to? So this is otherwise called as IOS neuron, inspiratory off switch neuron. So this is responsible for the terminating the activity of the inspiratory neuron or the eye neuron. So that causes turning off of the excitation of the muscles of inspiration, and so that allows the relaxation or the elastic recoiling of the chest wall and the lung, so which causes the expiration. So after the expiration again the cycle continues. So this IOS neuron causes the termination of the inspiration, which which is followed by the expiration, and this cycle continues. And the third one is the integrator neurons. So there are this is another type of the dorsal respiratory group of neurons. So this integrator neuron forms the basic circuitry of the generation of respiratory rhythm. So we know that um, so this integrator neuron, it when depolarized to a critical level, it leads to a firing of the IOS neuron or the inspiratory off switch neuron. So which is responsible for the for terminating the inspiration. So the eye neuron trigger the IOS neuron indirectly through the integrator neuron. So the integrator neuron's main role is to receive both the excitatory and the inhibitory inputs, integrate the activity, and it gives information accordingly to the IOS neuron. So the excitatory inputs to the integrator neurons that comes from the integrator neurons receives excitatory and the inhibitory inputs. The excitatory inputs are received from the cerebral cortex, pneumotaxic center, and the vagal afferents from the stress receptors of the lung. And the inhibitory signals they comes from the medullary inhibitory neurons. So that is the apneustic center. So which is very important to know. And also there are other group of neurons which is also called as P neurons or the pump cells. So they are the second order pulmonary stretch receptor sensory neurons. So these neurons, they do not receive other respiratory inputs. And there are propriobulbar inspiratory pump interneurons and early inspiratory, early burst, late onset, and post inspiration neurons. So these are all the other inspiratory neurons of the dorsal respiratory group of neurons. Ventral respiratory group of neurons. So they have both inspiratory cells and the expiratory cells, which are called as I and the E neurons. So there are three group of neurons present. One is the caudal part of the nucleus retroambigualis, which has only the E neurons. So it has bulbospinal expiratory premotor neurons, and then the intermediate part, so which has I neurons or the inspiratory neurons. So it has a nucleus called as nucleus para ambigualis, and then most rostral part, so that is Bodensinger complex, which has only the E neurons, that is the expiratory neuron. So it has nucleus retrofacialis NRF. So they control the pharyngeal and the laryngeal musculature. So which must relax during the expiration. And the intermediate part, they control the activity of inspiratory upper motor neurons. And then the nucleus retroambigualis, they form the upper motor neurons of the expiratory muscles. So these are the functions of the subgroups of the ventral respiratory group of neurons. So the interactions of the I and the E neurons, so they have inhibitory connections to each other. So they have inhibitory connections to each other. When the expiratory muscles are inhibited, the inspiratory muscles gets active. So it is vice versa. So they are reciprocally innervated, and they inhibit each other, in short. So the role of the ventral respiratory group of neurons, they remain totally inactive during quiet breathing. So during quiet breathing, it is dorsal respiratory group of neurons. So this ventral group, they become active only during forceful respiration. So that is, for example, during exercise, they become very active. Pontine respiratory center. So there are two groups of pontine respiratory center. So the one is apneustic center, another one is pneumotaxic center. So both these centers, they modify the activity of the medullary respiratory centers. So the first one is the apneustic center. So there are groups of inhibitory neurons which is present on both sides in the lower part of the, you can see here, in the lower part of the pons. So this sends signal to the integrated neurons, of the dorsal respiratory group of neurons that affects the inspiratory off switch neuron and prevent the switch off of the inspiratory signals from the inspiratory neuron. So this increases the tidal volume and the duration of the inspiration, so which results in the deep and the prolonged inspiratory effort, so which is termed as the apneusis. So but normally what happens is this apneustic center is inhibited, always inhibited by the pneumotaxic center. So this apneustic center is inhibited by the impulses carried by the vagus nerve and also by the activity of the pneumotaxic center. So normally this apneustic center will increase the depth and duration of the inspiration, but the apneustic center is kept inhibited by vagus nerve and the pneumotaxic center. Pneumotaxic center. So this is present on both sides in the upper pons in nucleus parabrachialis. So its main function is to inhibit the apneustic center. So the stimulation of the pneumotaxic center shortens the inspiration. So whereas, so as this pneumotaxic center always inhibits the apneustic center gives deep inspiration and increases the rate of inspiration, right? Here, if pneumotaxic center is that as it inhibits that apneustic center, this causes the shortening of the inspiration, so leading to shallow and more rapid pattern of respiration. So rhythm is controlled by the dorsal group of respiration. Rate and depth is controlled by the apneustic center and the pneumotaxic center in short. Reticular activating system. So it stimulates the respiratory centers to increase the respiratory drive. So this is the function of the reticular activating system. But during the sleep, what happens? The reticular activating system's activity, all the activity, it diminishes. All it diminishes, though respiratory drive decreases, alveolar ventilation decreases. So this results in the rise of carbon dioxide pressure. So that again stimulates the chemoreceptor to cause the respiration. Afferent impulses to the respiratory center. So the respiratory center, what happens is the generation of the respiratory rhythm happens at the respiratory center. So to execute, it will execute all its functions through the efferent nerves to the respiratory muscles. But the activity of the respiratory center is in turn is influenced by the afferent impulses from the lungs and also from other parts of the body. So let us discuss all the afferent impulses which comes to the respiratory center. So the first one is afferent impulses from the higher center, that is mainly the cortex and the limbic system, and then from non-chemical receptors. So there are various reflexes receptors present around the lung, stress receptors, J receptors, so which gives input to the respiratory centers. And also there are chemoreceptors, peripheral and the central chemoreceptors present. So input comes from the chemoreceptors too. Let us discuss it. So these are the various inputs that is received by the respiratory center. So this is the afferents from the higher center, so limbic system and the cortex, and then the chemoreceptors. This is non-chemical receptors, so even the proprioceptors, thermoceptors, irritant receptors, chest wall receptors, J receptors, and the pulmonary stretch receptors. Afferent impulses from the higher center, so it includes voluntary control system and the limbic control system. The voluntary control system is uh, originates from the neocortex, and these signals from the neocortex, it bypasses the medullary respiratory centers, and it directly projects on to the spinal respiratory neurons. So voluntary control of breathing is that happens, right, as it bypasses the medullary respiratory centers. Remember this. So this is how the voluntary control happens by the cortex, the neocortex. So for the activities like talking, singing, swimming, and breath holding, so we know that we can stop breathing voluntarily for some time, but you cannot commit suicide by voluntarily controlling your breath, right? So after some time, after 50 to 60 seconds of breath holding, the chemical, there will be chemicals, right? The carbon dioxide will increase, there will be less oxygen. So these chemical variation will override the inhibition. Even if you control the voluntarily the breathing, if you're holding, so ultimately the chemicals will act and it will not make you to continue to hold the breath. And hyperventilation, so it is voluntarily if you over breathe, like breath holding, it is over breathing. So even you can do it voluntarily, right? So this will be again discussed later in the chemoreceptors. And then limbic control system, so it is present in the pontomedullary respiratory neurons. So pain and any emotional stimuli like crying, laughing. So emotionally, whatever involves it also influences the rate and depth of the breathing. So this indicates the presence of afferents from the limbic system to the pontomedullary respiratory neurons. Afferent impulses from non-chemical receptors. So other than the chemoreceptor, there are non-chemical receptors. They are the pulmonary stretch receptors, J receptors, irritant receptors, proprioceptors, chest wall stretch receptors, baroreceptors, and the thermoreceptors. So here you can see the various inputs to the respiratory centers. This includes both the chemoreceptors and the non-chemical receptors, and also the impulse from the higher center. Let us discuss it one by one. So afferent impulses from the pulmonary stretch receptors. So Herring-Brewer reflex. So this is Herring-Brewer inflation reflex. So there is Herring-Brewer deflation reflex also. So this reflex is initiated when there is a stretch receptors in the smooth muscles of the bronchi and the bronchioles. So this gets stimulated by the inflation of the lungs. So the impulses through the vagal nerve, it reaches the frontomedullary respiratory center and it inhibits the respiration. So this reflex is weak in human. So it will not play any role during the tidal respiration, during quiet breathing or during a normal respiration. This will be initiated only when the tidal volume increases more than 1 to 1.5 liters. So normal tidal volume is 500 ml, right? So this is activated only when the tidal volume increases. So these are the two Herring-Brewer reflex. So this is the pathway of the Herring-Brewer inflation and the deflation reflex. So afferent from the J receptors. So the J receptors are very special to us as this was discovered by an Indian physiologist Arthur Singh Paintal in 1954. So this name juxto pulmonary capillary receptor. So named as J receptors. So because its location is very close to the pulmonary capillaries. So that is why it is called as J receptors. So it is very sensitive when there is increase in the interstitial fluid content, especially the alveolar interstitial fluid content. So the simulation, so when will the interstitial fluid content increase? In case if there is severe exercise or in the when the when in the high altitude. So that causes the stimulation of the J receptors. So the stimulation of the J receptor causes apnea, hyperventilation, bradycardia, hypotension, and weakness of the skeletal muscle. So this effect would discourage the exercise, thereby taking away the trigger of the pulmonary congestion. So afferent from the irritant receptors in the respiratory tract. So these irritant receptors, they are present below the mucosa of the whole respiratory tract. So they are stimulated by smoke, nauseous gas, or any particles, dust in the inspired air, and other conditions. To start with the cough reflex. So it is a protective reflex which is caused by the irritant receptors in the conducting zone of the respiratory tract, especially the pharynx, larynx, trachea, and the bronchi. So this is the in when there is an irritant in the conducting zone. So the by coughing the irritants can be expelled. Next one is the sneezing reflex. This is also a protective reflex. So when there is a stimulant or the irritant in the nasal mucosa, sneezing happens. And Herring-Brewer deflation reflex. So this is uh, happens when the irritant receptors in the bronchial epithelium, so caused by a large deflation of the lung. So as that is seen in when there is an lung collapse, atelectasis. So this reflex helps in opening up of the collapsed alveoli again, right? So this when we do yawning and all, so it opens the collapsed alveoli. And then deglutition reflex. So it is temporary apnea. So when the food passes through uh, during swallowing, during the pharyngeal space. So it has to bypass the air pipe and get it to the food pipe, right? So it avoids the respiratory tract and gets into the esophagus. So the deglutition reflex is important to prevent the entry of food into the trachea. And then afferent impulses from the proprioceptors. So they are present in muscles, tendons, joints. So whenever we change our position of different parts of our body, so this receptor gets activated, and this helps in increasing the ventilatory effort, especially during the exercise. Afferent impulses from chest wall stretch receptors. So these are the muscle spindle, that is the receptors present in the muscle fiber here in the intercostal muscles. So the stretching of the intercostal muscles, that produces a stretch reflex due to the stimulation of the receptor muscle spindle. So that causes the contraction of the intercostal muscle. So the muscle spindle helps to coordinate the breathing during the when there is a change in posture and during the speech. And intercostal to intercostal reflex. So this is when there is an increase in the intercostal nerve afferent activity that leads to the contraction of the neighboring intercostal muscle, and this is termed as the intercostal to intercostal reflex. So the next one is intercostal to phrenic reflex. So this is the reflex contraction of the diaphragm, though it has very few muscle spindle. So the reflex contraction of the diaphragm in response to the afferent nerve impulses which originates from the lower intercostal nerves. So this is called as the intercostal to the phrenic reflex. So as phrenic nerve innervates the diaphragm. From baroreceptors, so when there is a rise in the blood pressure, so the baroreceptors located in the carotid sinus and the aortic heart, they are stimulated. So it primarily has role in the regulation of the blood pressure, but here in the respiratory center, it causes inhibition of the respiration. But under physiological condition, the baroreceptors doesn't have any significant role in the regulation of respiration. But when there is an increased rise in blood pressure, so it will also act on the respiratory center and inhibit the respiration. Afferent impulses from the thermoreceptors. So there are warm and the cold receptors. So thermoreceptors are stimulated when there is a change in the temperature, especially the body temperature. So the warm receptors are stimulated, and so impulses reaches the cerebral cortex, and this cerebral cortex causes hyperventilation. So by hyperventilating, there will be heat loss in the expired air. So for example, in dogs, panting happens after a quiet running, right? Chemoreceptors, so chemical regulation of respiration. So they act when there is a change in the carbon dioxide pressure or the oxygen pressure or in the hydrogen ion concentration. So it operates under three types. One is peripheral chemoreceptors, center chemoreceptors, and finally the pulmonary and myocardial chemoreceptors. Chemoreceptors are the sensory nerve endings which are highly sensitive to the changes in the carbon dioxide, oxygen, and the hydrogen ions. So these are three types as we have seen. The first one is the peripheral chemoreceptors. So they are located in the carotid body. Here you can see the carotid body on both sides, and the aortic bodies, 2 to 3 aortic bodies in the aortic arch. So these are the peripheral chemoreceptors. Baroreceptors differs. So both are not same. So that is baroreceptors are carotid sinus and the aortic arch. That is where the baroreceptors are located. So the structure of the chemoreceptors, it has capsules, especially if this is the structure of the carotid body. It has capsules, the surrounding bodies, and then the sinusoidal large capillaries below the capsule, and then the epithelial cells. There are two types of epithelial cells, type 1 and type 2. So type 1 is glomus cells. So it secretes dopamine, so one of the catecholamine, and type 2 cells are glial cells. So mechanism of peripheral chemoreceptors. So when there is hypoxia in the blood vessels, as the chemoreceptors receive the highest blood flow in the body, so it takes the dissolved oxygen, and when there is an decreased oxygen in the blood flow, it receives and it decreases the activity of the potassium channel, and potassium, so the potassium channel closes and there will not be any efflux of the potassium, and that causes depolarization of the glomus cell, and that opens the L-type calcium channels, and calcium gets into, there will be calcium influx, calcium get into the cell, and there will be more depolarization, and that causes the release of the neurotransmitter dopamine from the vesicles by exocytosis, and this dopamine, there is a dopamine receptor in the sensory neuron, that is D2 receptor, so that gets activated, so it activates the afferent nerve. So this is how the peripheral chemoreceptor acts. So the afferent fibers from the carotid body, so it has the branch of the glossopharyngeal nerve, and that reaches the medulla, and from aortic body, so that join the aortic nerve, that is a branch of the vagal nerve, and that also reaches the medulla. So the factors that uh, affecting the chemoreceptors stimulation: oxygen tension versus the oxygen content. So the peripheral chemoreceptors monitor the dissolved oxygen, so that is the partial pressure of the oxygen rather than its total oxygen content. So the peripheral chemoreceptors are activated when the partial pressure of oxygen falls below 60 millimeter of mercury. Elevated partial pressure of carbon dioxide, so when there is elevation of 10 millimeter of mercury, so that also stimulates the peripheral chemoreceptor. But the major effect of the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is on the central chemoreceptors rather than the peripheral chemoreceptors. And then hydrogen concentration, when increased in the blood, when there is an increase in the blood, that also stimulates the peripheral chemoreceptors. Hyperkalemia, so even when there is an increase in the plasma potassium level, even in the absence of hypoxia, the potassium stimulates the peripheral chemoreceptors and causes hyperventilation. Asphyxia, so it is the combination of lack in the oxygen and excess of carbon dioxide, which also stimulates the peripheral chemoreceptors. So the function, so the peripheral chemoreceptors, they respond to hypoxia, hypercapnia, and when there is increased hydrogen ions concentration in the arterial blood. So afferent impulses from the chemoreceptors stimulates the dorsal respiratory group of neurons, which causes the increase in the rate and depth of the respiration. So that is the hyperventilation. So carotid bodies, they increase both the rate and depth of respiration, whereas aortic body, they increase only the rate of respiration. Central chemoreceptors, so they are located beneath the ventral surface of the medulla oblongata. Here you can see, so here it is the central chemoreceptor center, and here is the inspiratory center. So it is located nearby. So the neurons forming the central chemoreceptors project directly over the respiratory centers, which are located slightly deeper to the central chemoreceptors. So the mechanism, so we must know that the hydrogen ions cannot cross the blood brain barrier. So this barrier stops the hydrogen ions to cross the brain, to cross the barrier. So it will not cross the brain, and the hydrogen ions cannot directly stimulate the central chemoreceptor. So it gets converted into the carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide can easily dissolve and passes the blood brain barrier, and in the brain, after reaching the brain, the carbon dioxide, so uh, get mixed with the water and gets converted into the hydrogen ion. Again, this hydrogen ion stimulates the central chemoreceptors. Here you can see in the pictorial representation is given here. So the hydrogen ion, so will not directly reaches the central chemoreceptor. It comes through by getting converted into the carbon dioxide, and again it gets converted into the hydrogen ion. Though carbon dioxide also can stimulate the central chemoreceptors, hydrogen ion stimulates too. Pulmonary and myocardial chemoreceptors, they are located in the pulmonary and the coronary blood vessels innervated by the 10th cranial nerve. So it can be activated by the injection of veratridine and the nicotine. So this causes the brachycardia, hypotension, apnea, and followed by the tachypnea. So the effect of partial pressure of oxygen, partial pressure of carbon dioxide, and the hydrogen ion concentration on respiration. Effect of hypoxia on respiration. So the normal arterial partial pressure of oxygen is 100 millimeter of mercury. So when that falls below that, it is called as the hypoxia. When the arterial partial pressure of oxygen falls below 100, when it is between 100 to 60 millimeter of mercury, so the effect, there will not be much effect on the ventilation, but there will be and marked increase in the pulmonary ventilation when the partial pressure of oxygen falls below 60 millimeter of mercury. Here you can see in the graph, when the oxygen partial pressure of oxygen falls below 60, you can see the ventilation increases, right? Effect of hypercapnia. The normal arterial carbon dioxide pressure is 40 millimeter of mercury, so which is maintained constantly by the chemical regulation of respiration. So the hypercapnia, when there is a rise in the partial pressure of carbon dioxide due to an increase in the carbon dioxide production, that happens in the lung disorders, especially in the restrictive lung disorder. So the increase in the arterial partial pressure of carbon dioxide causes an increase in the pulmonary ventilation, mainly by stimulating the central chemoreceptors. So that causes the carbon dioxide washout by hyperventilating, and that restores the normal carbon dioxide arterial pressure. So when there is the chemoreceptors, central chemoreceptors are depressed by anesthesia, then the carbon dioxide increases the inspiration through the stimulation of the peripheral chemoreceptors. So here during anesthesia, the carbon dioxide is the main regulator of respiration. And then carbon dioxide narcosis, when the arterial carbon dioxide pressure increases above 50 millimeter of mercury. So there will be more accumulation of carbon dioxide in the body, that also depresses the central nervous system. So that includes the respiratory centers, right? So that causes headache, confusion, convulsions, coma, and that may lead on to the death. So normally what happens is during the hypercapnia, when there is increased carbon dioxide pressure even in the brain, so everywhere it has to get suppressed, right? But the respiratory center is the one which gets stimulated when there is hypercapnia under normal condition. Effect of arterial pH on respiration. So when there is increased hydrogen ion concentration, so that leads on to the hyperventilation. So that is called as a metabolic acidosis. So this happens when there is in conditions like diabetic ketoacidosis, renal failure, and severe exercise. And then when there is decreased hydrogen ion concentration, that is metabolic acidosis. So that happens when there is vomiting, right? During vomiting, there will be excessive loss of hydrochloric acid, right? In the respiratory acidosis and alkalosis, so primary pulmonary hyperventilation may lead to the elevation of arterial carbon dioxide pressure. So that results in the respiratory acidosis. Primary pulmonary hyperventilation also causes decrease in the arterial carbon dioxide pressure. So that leads on to the respiratory alkalosis. Effect of hyperventilation on respiration. After a period of voluntary hyperventilation, so the following pattern of respiration may be seen for a small period of time before the normal respiration is restored. So the first one is hyperventilation can be seen for a prolonged period of duration in most of the individuals. And apnea is complete cessation of breathing for 1 or 2 minutes. That can also be seen in some individuals. And then periodic breathing, that is chain stroke breathing. The alternate phase of apnea and breathing can also occur in some individuals. Effect of sleep on respiration. So due to the inhibition of the central chemoreceptors during the sleep, the sensitivity of respiratory center neurons to the arterial carbon dioxide pressure is decreased. So this may be due to the following effects. That is, the apnea for a brief period is one of the common occurrence during sleep, even in normal individuals. That is for 10 seconds. And then the sleep apnea syndrome. This sleep apnea syndrome is a clinical condition. Here, episodes of apnea are more common, especially in obese individuals. So, the snorers, and also in the children who have large tonsils and adenoids. So, the frequent episodes of more than 30 to 90 seconds of duration of apnea can happen in these conditions, and that can cause damage, hypoxic damage to the brain. So, and that may deteriorate the intellectual of the person. Thank you for your patient listening.